The Battle of Falme, the dragon is reborn in the sky. Good evening and welcome to the Sleep to Lore series. Tonight we will talk about the Battle of Falme, specifically the events leading up to the great conflict in the sky above Toman Head. This is a story about a rescue mission, about the breaking of chains, and about the moment the world realized that the dragon had truly been reborn. If you enjoy these long-form stories, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on the video, as it helps us continue to make this content for you. Before we begin, I have a question for you to answer in the comments section below. If you found the Horn of Valere and knew that blowing it would summon dead heroes to fight for you, but you did not know if they would fight for you or against you, would you still blow it? Let me know your answer in the comments. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the fog of Toman Head surround you as we begin our story. Let me know your answer in the comments. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the fog of Toman Head surround you as we begin our story. Chapter 1. Shadows in the Mist. The air in the city of Falme tasted of salt and fear. It was a heavy, damp sensation that clung to the back of the throat and settled deep in the lungs. This was not the clean, bracing salt air of a normal harbour town, where fishermen shouted greetings and the smell of roasting fish filled the evening breeze. No, this air was stagnant. It felt old and used, as if the strange grey fog that hung perpetually over the streets had trapped the breath of the city and refused to let it cycle out to the open ocean. Naive Almiara moved through the deepening shadows of an alleyway, her back pressed against the rough, cold stone of a warehouse wall. She tried to keep her breathing shallow and quiet. Beside her, Elaine Trakand was doing the same, though the daughter heir of Andor looked far more out of place in the grime of the back streets than Nynaeve did. Elaine's golden-red hair was covered by a rough hood, but her posture was still too straight, too regal for a city that had been beaten into submission by foreign invaders. Falme was no longer a free city. It had fallen to the Seanchan. To the people of the Westlands, the Seanchan were a nightmare come to life. They were invaders from across the Arith Ocean who claimed to be the descendants of the armies sent by Arthur Hawkwing 1,000 years ago. They had returned to reclaim the lands of their ancestors, and they had brought with them a culture so alien and so brutal that the mind struggled to comprehend it. Nynaeve peered around the corner of the building. Her dark eyes scanned the street. The sun was setting, but the light did not turn golden or orange. Instead, it seemed to bleed away into the grey mist, turning everything a dull, bruised purple. The street was paved with cobblestones that were slick with moisture. There were few people out, and those who were walked with their heads down, eyes fixed on their feet. They moved quickly, scurrying from door to door, like frightened mice hoping to avoid the gaze of a hawk. And there were hawks here, worse than hawks. Marching down the center of the street was a patrol of Seanchan soldiers. They did not look like any soldiers Nynaeve had ever seen in the Two Rivers, or in Caemlyn, or even in Sienna. Their armor was lacquered and painted in bizarre overlapping plates that made them look less like men and more like giant insects. The helmets were shaped like the heads of beetles, or strange monsters with mandibles that covered the wearer's face. They carried spears with hooked blades and curved swords that looked wicked and sharp. But the soldiers were not what made Nynaeve's stomach churn with a mixture of nausea and rage. It was what walked with them. Behind the soldiers walked a woman. She wore a dress of dark blue panels, featuring lightning bolts of red and silver. Her hair was shaved on the sides, and the remaining hair was gathered in a long, dark tail that hung down her back. She walked with an air of absolute authority, a confidence that said she owned the very ground she stepped on. She was a suldam, a leash holder, and held by a silvery leash in her hand was another woman. The woman on the other end of the leash wore a dress of plain grey wool. Her hair was loose and unkempt. Around her neck was a collar of silvery metal that matched the bracelet on the suldam's wrist. This collar was the Adam. It was a device of nightmare. It linked the two women together. The woman in the grey dress was a domain, which meant one who must be leashed. She was a woman who could channel the One power. In the Seanchan lands, women who could channel were not Aes Sedai. They were not respected. They were treated as dangerous animals' property to be owned and used as weapons. Nynaeve watched as the patrol passed. The domain looked at nothing. Her eyes were blank and empty, devoid of hope or spark. She trotted along behind the Suldam like a well-trained dog. Nynaeve's hand gripped her braid, a habit she had never been able to break when she was angry or nervous. She tugged at it sharply. The anger inside her was a hot, boiling thing. It was this anger that allowed her to channel the One power, but right now, she had to suppress it. She could not channel here. If she embraced the source, the domain walking down the street might feel it. Women who could channel could sense other women channeling nearby. If that domain felt Nynaeve channeling, she would alert her Suldam, and the entire patrol would descend on this alleyway instantly. Nynaeve and Elaine were alone in this hostile city. Egwene was missing. They knew she had been taken. They knew she was somewhere in the kennels, the large building where the Seanchan kept their domain. The thought of Egwene Alvere, the innkeeper's daughter from Emond's Field, with her big brown eyes and her stubborn determination, being treated like a dog, made Nynaeve want to scream. She wanted to burn this entire city to the ground with the One power. But she couldn't. Not yet. They needed a plan. Elaine leaned close, her whisper barely audible over the distant sound of the ocean crashing against the docks. That was the third patrol in an hour, Elaine said. They are increasing the guard. Nynaeve nodded grimly. They know something is happening, she whispered back. Or they are just preparing for their next conquest. These people do not know how to stop. We cannot just walk into the domain quarters, Nynaeve, Elaine said, her voice trembling slightly. There are guards everywhere, and the domain themselves. If we get close, they will sense us. They will know we can channel. I know, Nynaeve snapped quietly. She took a breath to steady herself. She didn't mean to snap at Elaine. Elaine was brave. She was a princess who had left the safety of the White Tower to help her friends. She did not have to be here, but she was. I know, Elaine, but we have to get Egwene out. I promised I would look after her. I will not leave her in chains. Nynaeve looked back at the street. The patrol had turned a corner and disappeared into the fog. The street was empty again. We need a disguise, Nynaeve said. A real one. Hoods and cloaks are not enough. If we look like commoners, we are ignored, but we cannot get into the restricted areas. If we look like Seanchan, we don't speak like them, Elaine pointed out. Their accent is slurring and strange. As soon as we open our mouths, they will know. Then we won't speak, Nynaeve said. She was watching a specific building across the street. It was a livery stable, or what passed for one in Falme. Earlier, she had seen a Suldam go in there alone. It seemed that even the leash holders had errands to run, or moments where they wanted to be away from the stifling atmosphere of the kennels. Come on, Nynaeve said, quietly. They crossed the street. The cobblestones were slippery, and Nynaeve had to be careful not to let her boots clatter. They slipped into the open door of the stable. Inside it smelled of hay and manure and the musk of horses. But there was another smell too, a sharper reptile scent. In the back stalls there were no horses. There were Grolm. Nynaeve had seen Grolm before when she and her friends had travelled through the portal stones to a mirror world. But seeing them here in the waking world was still a shock. They were creatures the size of horses, but they looked like frogs crossed with bears. They had 3 eyes and beaks that could snap a man's leg in half. Their skin was a dark, leathery green. They shifted in their stalls, their claws scraping on the stone floor. Nynaeve froze, hoping the beasts would not make a noise. They seemed to be resting. Further back in the stable near a small tack room, a woman was standing. She was a Suldam. She had taken off her lightning bolt dress and was brushing dirt from it. She wore a white shift underneath. She looked young, perhaps Nynaeve's age, or a little older. Her face was hard, even in relaxation. Nynaeve signaled to Elaine. They needed to take this woman. They needed her dress, and they needed information. Nynaeve crept forward. She reached out for the one power. She was angry enough. The injustice of the city, the fear for Egwene, the sheer exhaustion of running and hiding, it all fed the fire inside her. The true source flooded into her, filling her with life and sweetness and joy, but she pushed the euphoria aside. She wove flows of air. The Suldam turned, perhaps sensing a presence or hearing a rustle of straw. Her eyes widened as she saw Nynaeve. She opened her mouth to scream. Nynaeve struck with the flows of air. A gag of hardened air clamped over the woman's mouth, silencing her cry instantly. Bonds of air wrapped around her arms and legs, snapping them tight against her body. The woman toppled over, stiff as a board, and landed in the straw with a muffled thump. Nynaeve rushed forward, Elaine right on her heels. They dragged the woman into the tack room and closed the door. The room was small, cluttered with harnesses and saddles. Nynaeve released the flows of air only after they had physically bound the woman's hands and gagged her with a strip of cloth found on a workbench. The woman glared at them. Her eyes were furious. She was terrified, but she was also indignant. How dare these barbarians touch a Suldam? Nynaeve stood over her, breathing hard. "We need answers," Nynaeve said, "and we need your clothes." The woman struggled against her bonds, making muffled noises of outrage. Elaine was looking at the woman's wrist. On her left wrist was a silver bracelet. It was part of an Ardam. The leash was not attached, currently coiled on a hook on the wall nearby, but the bracelet was locked onto her arm. "She can't take it off without a key," Elaine whispered. "Or without opening it with the power." Nynaeve frowned. She looked at the leash on the wall. It was a segmented silver chain looking almost like a snake. At one end was the collar that went around the domain's neck. A thought struck Nynaeve. A dangerous, wild thought. The Seanchan claimed that Suldam and domain were completely different. They said domain were dangerous animals who had the spark of the one power and had to be controlled. They said Suldam were regular women who had the skill to control them, but Nynaeve had always wondered. The connection between the two was deep. They shared emotions. They shared pain. How could a woman who could not channel possibly utilize a terra angrial like the Ardam to control someone who could? Nynaeve picked up the collar from the wall. It felt cool and heavy in her hand. The metal was smooth. "What are you doing?" Elaine asked, her eyes wide. "I want to see something," Nynaeve muttered. She turned back to the bound woman on the floor. The Suldam's eyes went wide when she saw the collar in Nynaeve's hand. The outrage vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. She shook her head violently, tears springing to her eyes. She made desperate pleading noises behind the gag. "Hold her still," Nynaeve told Elaine. Elaine hesitated, then grabbed the woman's shoulders. The Suldam thrashed, but she was tied securely. Nynaeve knelt down. She unclasped the collar. It had a hidden catch, but Nynaeve could feel where it was. She brought the collar to the woman's neck. The woman squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking out. She was shaking so hard her teeth would have chattered if not for the gag. Nynaeve snapped the collar shut around the Suldam's neck. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Nynaeve felt it. Because Nynaeve was holding the bracelet? No, the bracelet was still on the woman's wrist. But the link was trying to form. Nynaeve grabbed the bracelet on the woman's wrist. She channeled a tiny flow of spirit into it, probing the mechanism. The Suldam gasped. Nynaeve's eyes widened. The connection snapped into place. Nynaeve could feel the woman. She could feel her terror, her horror, her absolute revulsion. But she could feel something else too. She could feel the potential. "She can learn," Nynaeve whispered. The realization was like a lightning bolt. "Elaine, she can learn to channel." Elaine looked shocked. "What? But she is a Suldam." The Adam only works on women who can channel, Nynaeve said, her voice gaining strength. That is why they can wear the bracelet. They have the spark within them. They just haven't learned to use it. Or perhaps they have the ability to learn, but not the inborn spark that manifests on its own. In the tower we catch them and teach them. Here they become Suldam. Nynaeve looked down at the woman. You are the same as the women you enslave, she said harshly. You are a Damain who was just lucky enough not to spark on her own. The woman on the floor stopped struggling. She went completely limp. Her eyes stared up at the ceiling, blank and broken. The truth had shattered her worldview. The entire Seanchan Empire was built on the idea that channelers were subhuman monsters. To learn that she herself was one of them meant she was a monster in her own eyes. We can use this, Nynaeve said. She began to untie the woman's gag. What is your name? The woman did not answer at first. She just wept silently. Name. Nynaeve barked, giving the woman a shake. Sita, the woman whispered. Her voice was hoarse. My name is Sita. Well, Sita, Nynaeve said, you are going to help us. You are going to walk us right into the domain quarters. And if you try to signal for help, if you try to run, I will use this connection to make you regret you were ever born. Do you understand? Seta nodded slowly. She looked at the collar around her own neck. I am domain, she whispered. I am a beast. You are a woman, Elaine said gently, though her face was still pale. But you have done terrible things to other women. Now you will help us fix it. It took time to prepare. They could not simply walk out immediately. They had to make Seta presentable. They checked the street. The fog was thickening, which was a blessing. It would hide their faces from a distance. Nynaeve formulated the plan. Seta would walk as the Suldam. She would escort Nynaeve and Elaine. They would pretend to be... what? Prisoners. No, if they were prisoners, they would be collared. Servants? We will be bringing a delivery, Nynaeve decided. Or we are new servants assigned to the kennels. Seta will vouch for us. She is broken, Elaine observed, looking at Seta, who was staring at the wall. Will she be able to speak? She will speak if she doesn't want pain, Nynaeve said. She hated doing this. She hated using the Adam. It felt slimy and wrong to touch the One Power through such a twisted device. It made her feel dirty. But she thought of Egwene. She thought of Egwene alone in the dark. And she hardened her heart. They left the stable. Sita walked in front. She wore her dress with the lightning bolts. She had put the bracelet back on her wrist, but the collar was hidden beneath the high neck of her dress. Nynaeve walked close behind her hand, resting on Seta's back. To anyone watching it, might look like a servant attending her mistress. In reality, Nynaeve was ready to channel at the slightest provocation. They moved through the foggy streets. Falme was eerie at night. The Seanchan lamps gave off a strange, unwavering light. They passed more patrols. Every time they saw the insect armor of the soldiers, Nynaeve's heart hammered against her ribs. She was sure they would be stopped. She was sure a soldier would ask why a Suldam was out so late with two strangers. But the soldiers merely saluted Seta and moved on. The Suldam were high in the hierarchy here. No common soldier would dare question one. They reached the building that housed the domain. It was a large stone structure that had once been a merchant's hall, or perhaps a government building. Now, it was a prison. There were guards at the door. Seta stopped. She was trembling. "Move!" Nynaeve hissed. Seta stepped forward. The guards crossed their spears. "Business!" one of the guards grunted. Seta swallowed. She looked like she might faint. Nynaeve prodded her sharply in the back with a finger. Seta flinched. I have brought fresh servants," Seta stammered. Her voice was weak, but it held the accent. For the High Lady Suroth's domain. They were requested." The guard looked at Nynaeve and Elaine. He looked them up and down with a sneer. "They look like Westlander filth," he muttered. "They are to be scrubbed and put to work," Seta said, gaining a little more confidence from her fear of Nynaeve. "Let us pass." The guard shrugged and uncrossed the spears. "Go on then." They walked through the doors. Nynaeve let out a breath she felt she had been holding for an hour. They were in. The interior of the building was warm and well lit. The floors were polished wood. It looked like a wealthy manor house, not a prison. But then Nynaeve heard the sounds. It was quiet, but it was there. The sound of whimpering, the sound of a chain rattling. They walked down a long hallway. Doors opened off to either side. Some were open. Nynaeve glanced into one as they passed. She saw a woman sitting on a cushion on the floor. She was eating from a bowl with her fingers. A suldam sat in a chair nearby, reading a book, casually holding the leash. The woman on the floor looked happy. That was the worst part. She looked happy to be fed. She looked at her mistress with adoration. Nynaeve felt sick. They broke them. They didn't just enslave them. They broke their minds until they loved the chains. "Where is she?" Nynaeve whispered to Seta. "Where is the girl who was caught recently? The one from the Westlands, strong in the power?" Seta's eyes darted around. The new one. She is in the lower levels with Renna. Renna is her suldam." "Take us there," Nynaeve commanded. They went down a flight of stairs. The air here was cooler damp. The luxury of the upper floors gave way to bare stone. This was the true prison. They reached a heavy wooden door. Seta hesitated. "Open it," Nynaeve said. Seta opened the door. The room inside was small and windowless. A single lamp burned on a table. There was a woman standing in the center of the room. She was young, with dark hair and big brown eyes. She wore the grey dress of a domain. Around her neck was the silver collar. It was Egwene. She looked terrible. Her face was pale and drawn. There were dark circles under her eyes. She looked thinner. But what scared Nynaeve the most was the way Egwene stood. She stood with her head bowed, her hands clasped in front of her. She looked defeated. "Egwene," Nynaeve whispered. Egwene's head snapped up. Her eyes went wide. For a second there was no recognition, only fear. She thought it was a test. She thought she was about to be punished. Then she saw Nynaeve. She saw Elaine. "Nynaeve?" Egwene's voice was a croak. "Elaine." She took a step forward, then stopped the chain at her neck, pulling tight. The leash was hooked to a ring on the wall. Nynaeve rushed forward. She ignored Seta for a moment. She ran to Egwene and threw her arms around her. Egwene stiffened. Then she collapsed into Nynaeve's arms. She didn't cry. She just shook. "You came," she whispered. I thought no one would come. I thought I was going to be here forever." "We came," Nynaeve said fiercely. "We are getting you out, right now." Elaine was hugging them both, tears streaming down her face. "We are going home, Egwene. We are going home." Nynaeve pulled back. She looked at the collar around Egwene's neck. It was the same mechanism as the one on Seta. "I can open this," Nynaeve said. "I know how now." She reached for the collar. Suddenly the door to the room banged open. Nynaeve spun around. Elaine gasped. A woman stood in the doorway. She was tall, with the same shaved head and long tail of hair as Seta. She wore the blue lightning dress. She carried a tray of food. It was Renna, Egwene's suldam. Renna looked at the scene. She saw Seta standing by the wall, looking terrified. She saw Nynaeve and Elaine. She saw Nynaeve's hands on Egwene's collar. Renna dropped the tray. It clattered loudly on the stone floor, sending soup and bread flying. "What is the meaning of this?" Renna demanded. Her voice was sharp, authoritative. She looked at Seta. "Seta, why are you here? Who are these women? Why are they touching my domain?" Seta whimpered. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She was too broken by the revelation of her own nature. Renna's eyes narrowed. She stepped into the room, reaching for the bracelet at her own wrist. "Get away from her," she snarled at Nynaeve. "That is property of the Empress, may she live forever. Step away or I will make you scream." Nynaeve stood up. She prepared to channel. She would fight this woman. She would kill her if she had to. But before Nynaeve could embrace the source movement flashed from behind her. It was Egwene. Egwene did not look defeated anymore. The moment she saw Renna, the moment she saw the woman who had tortured her, who had humiliated her, who had treated her like a dog, something inside Egwene snapped. It was not a snap of breaking. It was the snap of a trap, springing shut. Egwene lunged. She didn't use the one power. She couldn't not, while the collar was on her and Renna wore the bracelet. She used her body. Egwene threw herself at Renna. It was a tackle born of pure, unadulterated hatred. She hit the Suldam in the stomach, driving her back against the wall. Renna grunted the air, leaving her lungs. You animal!" she gasped. She raised her hand to strike Egwene. She reached for the power through the link, intending to punish Egwene with pain so severe it would leave her writhing on the floor. But Egwene was too close. Egwene grabbed the pitcher of water from the small table nearby. It was heavy stone. She swung it. Crack. The pitcher shattered against the side of Renna's head. Renna's eyes rolled back. She slumped, sliding down the wall to the floor. She wasn't dead, but she was dazed, bleeding from a cut on her temple. Egwene stood over her. Her chest was heaving, her eyes were wild. She looked like a wolf that had turned on the hunter. "Egwene!" Nynaeve cried. "Stop! We have to go!" Egwene looked down at Renna. Then she looked at the bracelet on Renna's wrist. "Take it off her," Egwene said. Her voice was cold. It was a voice Nynaeve had never heard from the innkeeper's daughter. "Take the bracelet off her." Nynaeve knelt by Renna. She unclasped the bracelet. "Now take the collar off me," Egwene commanded. Nynaeve worked the latch on Egwene's collar. With a soft click, it opened. Egwene pulled the collar from her neck. She rubbed the skin there. It was red and raw. She took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, she was free. She could feel the true source waiting for her, and there was no barrier, no one standing between her and the light. She reached out and embraced it. The one power flooded into her. Egwene looked at the collar in her hand. Then she looked at Renna, moaning on the floor. "Put it on her," Egwene said. "Egwene!" Elaine started. "We don't have time for revenge." "It is not revenge," Egwene said. "It is safety. If she wakes up, she will raise the alarm. If she is collared, she is harmless. Put it on her, Nynaeve. Or I will." Nynaeve hesitated only for a second. She saw the look in Egwene's eyes. She understood. She snapped the collar around Renna's neck. Renna groaned and her eyes fluttered open. She reached for her neck, feeling the metal. Her eyes focused. She saw Egwene standing over her. She saw the collar. "No," Renna whispered. "No, I am Suldam." "You are Damain," Egwene said. She picked up the bracelet that had been on Renna's wrist. She snapped it onto her own arm. Renna screamed. It was a scream of pure horror. "Be quiet," Egwene said. She channeled. She didn't use a flow of air to gag Renna. She used the link. She sent a jolt of pain through the leash. Renna's scream cut off instantly. She curled into a ball, sobbing silently. Nynaeve watched her friend. She felt a chill. Egwene had survived, but she had changed. The innocent girl who wanted to see the world was gone. In her place was a woman who knew what it meant to be powerless, and who would never let it happen again. "We have two of them now," Nynaeve said quietly. Seta and Renna. Seta was still cowering in the corner. "Leave them," Egwene said. She took the bracelet off her wrist and tossed it onto the floor next to Renna. "Leave them here. They are bound." They cannot scream if they know what is good for them. Egwene looked at Seta. If you make a sound, Egwene told her, I will come back, and I will not be gentle. Seta nodded frantically. We need to move, Elaine said urgently. She was watching the door. Someone will have heard that crash. The docks, Nynaeve said. We go to the docks. If we can find a ship. We can't just leave, Egwene said. She was smoothing her dress, trying to regain her composure. Min is here, and Rand. I dreamed of him. He's coming. We don't know where Rand is, Nynaeve said, but we have to get you to safety. Come. They slipped out of the room, leaving the two Suldam, now Domain, locked in the cell. The irony was poetic, but they did not have time to appreciate it. They moved back up the stairs. The building was still quiet. They had been lucky. Incredibly lucky. They reached the side exit that Seta had brought them through. They slipped out into the night. The fog was even thicker now. It was a wall of white. You could not see 5 feet in front of you. This was good for hiding, but bad for navigating. Which way is the harbour? Elaine whispered. Down, Nynaeve said. All water flows down. We follow the slope of the street. They began to run. They stuck to the shadows, avoiding the main thoroughfares. They heard shouts in the distance. The alarm was being raised. Perhaps someone had found the Suldam in the stable. Perhaps someone had found Renna. The city of Falme was waking up. The beast was stirring. As they ran, Nynaeve's mind raced. They had Egwene. That was the most important thing. But they were still trapped in a city full of enemies. They had no horses. They had no boat. And somewhere out there in the dark, the Seanchan army was preparing for war. And deeper still in the shadows, something else was moving. Nynaeve could feel it. A tension in the air that had nothing to do with the Seanchan. It felt like a storm building. A storm of the One Power. A storm of destiny. The wheel of time weaves as the wheel wills, she thought. And right now the pattern is weaving something terrible and magnificent around us. They turned a corner and nearly ran into a patrol of white cloaks, the children of the light, here in Falme. Nynaeve pulled Egwene and Elaine back into a doorway just in time. The white cloaks rode past their white tabards, ghostly in the fog. They looked tense, ready for battle. White cloaks, Elaine breathed. What are they doing here? Geofram Bornhald, Nynaeve remembered. The Legion that was tracking Perrin and the others. They must have followed them here. This is getting complicated, Egwene muttered. She was rubbing her wrists where the rope had chafed her before she was collared. Seanchan and white cloaks. If they fight, we might be able to slip away in the chaos, Nynaeve said. Or get crushed in the middle, Elaine countered. They continued their descent toward the harbour. The smell of the sea grew stronger, mixing with the smell of wet stone and smoke. Suddenly a horn sounded. It was not a Seanchan horn, which sounded like a brazen trumpet, and it was not a white cloak trumpet. It was a deep, mournful sound, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the very bones of the earth. It was a sound that Nynaeve felt more than heard. Om. The sound rolled over the city. It pierced the fog. Egwene stopped dead. The horn, she whispered. The Horn of Valere. It can't be, Nynaeve said. The horn is lost. Fane took it. Rand has it, Egwene said. Her eyes were shining. He must have it. He came for me. He came for the horn. The sound came again, louder this time. It was a call to arms, a call to the dead. If the horn is sounded, Elaine said, her voice awestruck, then the heroes will come. The heroes of the ages. We need to find them, Egwene said. We need to find Rand. We need to get out of the city, Nynaeve insisted. If the heroes come, there will be a battle such as the world has not seen since the Trolloc Wars. We cannot be in the middle of it. But the choice was taken from them. From the direction of the harbour, a massive explosion of fire lit up the fog. The ground shook. "Damane," Egwene hissed. "They are blasting the ships." The Seanchan were attacking the harbour. They were cutting off the escape route. "We can't go to the docks," Nynaeve realised. "They are burning them." "Then where?" Elaine cried. Nynaeve looked around. The city was closing in, the Seanchan behind them, the burning harbour ahead, the white cloaks on the flank. "We go up," Nynaeve said, looking toward the high ground of the peninsula, away from the city, toward the watch. "Maybe we can hide in the rocks until the battle is over." They turned and ran back the way they came, heading for the open ground beyond the city walls. As they ran, the fog began to swirl. It wasn't just wind. Forms were taking shape in the mist, giant forms. Nynaeve looked up and gasped. In the sky above them, projected against the clouds like a shadow puppet show, but vividly real, were figures. Two men fighting. One was a man of fire, his face a mask of burns and hatred. His eyes were caverns of flame. He wielded a staff of black darkness. The other was a man with a sword that glowed like the sun. "Rand," Egwene breathed. It was Rand al'Thor. He was fighting in the sky. He was fighting the Dark One. The Battle of Falme had begun, and the dragon was reborn. This concludes Chapter 1 of our story. We have witnessed the rescue of Egwene, the fall of the Sul'dam, and the beginning of the chaos that will shake the world. But this is only the beginning. The horn has sounded. The heroes are riding down the winds of time. And Rand al'Thor stands face to face with the shadow itself. Chapter 2. The grave is no bar. The fog was not merely weather anymore. It was a living thing, a shroud that the pattern itself had pulled over the head of Toman Head to hide the violence that was about to unfold. Inside the city of Falme, the streets were slick with condensation. The stones of the pavement were wet and black, reflecting the scant light of the torches that sputtered in the iron sconces on the walls. Rand al'Thor moved through this grey soup, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The heron mark on the blade was hidden inside the scabbard, but he could feel the presence of the weapon against his hip. It was a weight that was becoming more and more familiar to him, a part of his body that he could not shed. Beside him moved Ingtar Shinoa. The Shi'anaran lord was a bulk of steel and leather. His armor was heavy, the overlapping plates designed to turn the blow of a Trollocs axe. He moved with the surprising grace of a man who had spent his entire life training for war. But there was a tension in Ingtar tonight that went beyond the usual pre-battle nerves. His face was set in a grim line, his eyes dark and troubled. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. Behind them came Mat Cauthon and Perrin Ibera. Mat was pale, his face gaunt. He looked like he had not slept in a week. His eyes were constantly darting around, searching the shadows. He clutched his own chest as if it hurt. The influence of the ruby-hilted dagger from Shadar Logoth was eating him alive. He needed that dagger back. He needed it to survive. Without it, the connection would kill him. Perrin moved silently, his yellow eyes glowing faintly in the gloom. He was the most cautious of them all. He could smell the Seanchan. He could smell the Grolm and the Lopar, those strange beasts brought from across the ocean. He could smell the sweat of the soldiers and the fear of the populace. It was a cacophony of scents that must have been overwhelming, but Perrin kept his face impassive. They were accompanied by Hurin the Sniffer. The small man looked terrified. He could smell violence, not the violence of the present, but the violence that had happened in the past, and the violence that was to come. In a city like Falme, occupied by a brutal conquering army, the air must have stank of murder to him. "This way," Hurin whispered, pointing a shaking finger toward a large building that loomed out of the fog. "The trail ends here. The Dark Friends, Fane, and the things they stole. They are in there." It was the manor of the High Lord Turak. The building was alien. It did not look like the sturdy stone keeps of Shianar or the timber-framed houses of the two rivers. It was a sprawling structure of wood and paper and curved roof tiles. The architecture was graceful, but it felt wrong to Rand's eyes. It felt like something that didn't belong in this world. "Guards!" Ingtar hissed. Two soldiers in that insect-like lacquered armor stood at the main gate. They held tall spears. "We cannot fight them," Rand whispered. "If we raise the alarm, the whole city will be on us before we even get inside." "We go over," Perrin said softly. He pointed to a section of the wall where a tree grew close its branches overhanging the tiles of the wall. They moved like shadows. They were country boys, but they were country boys who had been hunted by the Dark One himself for months. They had learned to hide. They had learned to move without sound. Rand boosted Mat up into the tree. Mat moved with a sudden fluid agility, despite his sickness. He dropped down onto the wall, and then signaled for the others. One by one, they climbed. They dropped into the garden on the other side. The garden was a place of strange tranquility. Even in the mist, the shapes of the bushes and the placement of the stones spoke of a rigid order. The Seanchan sought to control nature, to manicure it into submission, just as they did with people. The gravel paths were raked into perfect swirls. They crept toward the main house. The paper screens that served as walls were glowing with soft light from within. They could see shadows moving against the paper. Silhouettes of servants, of soldiers. "Where is the horn?" Ingtar asked Hurin, his voice barely a breath. Hurin sniffed the air, his nose twitching like a rabbit's. "Deep inside. The trail is foul, Lord Ingtar. It tastes of old corruption. Fane has been here, but he is gone now. The things he brought, they remain." They found a side entrance, a sliding door that had been left slightly ajar. They slipped inside, taking their boots off by instinct, so as not to clatter on the polished wooden floors. The interior of the manor smelled of incense. It was a spicy, cloying scent that masked the smell of the damp fog outside. The floors were smooth, darker wood that gleamed. On the walls hung tapestries of strange lands, mountains that were two tall birds with feathers of rainbow colors. They moved through the corridors. They passed servants who were scrubbing the floors with their heads bowed so low they did not see the intruders. The servants here were terrified. They had learned that to look up was to invite punishment. Their fear was Rand's shield. Hurin led them to a large set of double doors. The wood was lacquered red and gold. "In there," Hurin mouthed. Ingtar drew his sword. The sound of the steel sliding from the sheath was a soft hiss like a snake. Rand drew his own blade. The heron mark seemed to catch the dim light. Mat was shaking. He pulled a dagger from his belt, but it was just a common steel knife, not the one he needed. "Open it," he whispered, his voice ragged. Rand reached out and slid the door open. The room beyond was spacious. It was a gallery of sorts. The High Lord Turak was a collector. The room was filled with plinths and stands, each holding an object. There were vases of delicate porcelain, ancient statues of forgotten kings, odd mechanical devices of brass and glass. It was a museum of the world the Seanchan had come to conquer. And there in the center of the room, on a low table, sat a chest. It was a simple chest of dark wood bound with iron, but to Rand it seemed to pulse. It was the chest that had been stolen from Faldara, the chest that held the Horn of Valere, and resting on top of the chest scabbard lying next to it was the ruby-hilted dagger. Mat let out a low moan. It was a sound of pure hunger. He rushed forward, forgetting all caution. "It's there," he gasped. "It's mine." "Mat, wait," Rand hissed. But Mat was already at the table. He grabbed the dagger. The moment his hand touched the hilt, a visible shudder went through him. He gasped as if he had just surfaced from drowning. The color seemed to return to his cheeks slightly, though his eyes remained feverish. He clutched the dagger to his chest. "I have it," he whispered. "I have it." "The horn," Ingtar said, stepping into the room. He looked at the chest. Open it. We must be sure. Perrin lifted the lid of the chest. Inside, resting on a bed of velvet, lay the Horn of Valere. It was a simple curve of gold inscribed with silver script. The grave is no bar to my call. It was real. They had done it. We have to go, Rand said. The hair on the back of his neck was standing up. He felt a prickling sensation on his skin. It was the feeling of being watched. Going so soon, a voice said, smooth as silk. Rand spun around. From behind a screen at the far end of the room, a man stepped out. He was tall and slender. He wore a robe of dark silk embroidered with golden hawks. His head was shaved, except for a long braid that hung down his back, similar to the Suldam. But his fingernails were long, lacquered blue and green. It was High Lord Turak. He did not look surprised. He did not look afraid. He looked curious. I had wondered who would come for these, Turak said, walking slowly toward them. He did not draw a weapon. His hands were clasped behind his back. Padan Fain told me that the shadow awaited these items. But you do not look like shadow spawn. You look like peasants. Rand stepped forward, placing himself between Turak and the others. He held his sword in a two-handed grip, the blade angled low. We are leaving, Rand said. We are taking what is ours. Turak stopped. He looked at Rand's sword. His eyes lingered on the heron mark etched into the steel. A heron mark blade, Turak said softly. He sounded delighted. A curiosity indeed. In my lands, only a blade master may carry such a weapon. Did you kill a blade master to get that boy? Or did you buy it from a thief? It was given to me, Rand said, by my father. Your father, Turak mused. So the savages of the Westlands have blade masters hiding in their woods. How fascinating. Turak reached to his side. He wore a sword, a curved blade in a lacquered scabbard. He drew it. The motion was fluid, almost casual, yet it spoke of a lifetime of practice. I have not practiced against a blade master in some time, Turak said. The locals are disappointing. They lack finesse. They hack and hew like woodcutters. He assumed a stance. It was relaxed, yet ready. Rand, Ingtar said, his voice tight. We can take him together. No, Turak said. If you all attack, my guards will hear. They are just outside. 50 of them. If you attack together, you will die before you reach the door. But if this boy wishes to prove his right to carry that sword, I will indulge him. A duel. Rand looked at Ingtar. He looked at Mat, who was clutching the dagger and the horn. Go, Rand whispered. Get the horn out. Rand, Perrin started. Go, Rand shouted. He stepped forward, entering the void. It was a mental technique Tam had taught him. Feed the fear into the flame. Feed the anger into the flame. Feed the emotion into the flame until there is nothing left. Rand's mind became a still pool. The room sharpened. He could see the dust motes dancing in the light. He could see the weave of the silk on Turak's robe. He could hear the heartbeat of the man standing across from him. He was not Rand al'Thor, the shepherd. He was the sword. Turak smiled. You know the void, he noted. Interesting. Turak moved. He came in a blur. The strike was a horizontal slash aimed at Rand's neck. Rand reacted without thinking. The swallow takes flight. He stepped back and brought his blade up, deflecting the blow. The steel rang out a clear, bell-like tone that echoed in the quiet room. Turak spun the momentum of his block strike, carrying him into a backhand cut. The moon rises over the water. Rand ducked and slashed upward. Turak sidestepped effortlessly. They circled. Rand felt the sweat trickling down his back. The void kept him calm, but his body knew the danger. Turak was fast, faster than anyone Rand had ever fought. Faster than Lan? Maybe not, but Lan was not here. You have the forms, Turak said, his voice conversational, but you are raw. You hesitate. Turak attacked again. This time it was a flurry of blows. The wood grouse dances, the kingfisher dives. Rand parried desperately. He was being driven back. He backed past a vase of blue porcelain. Turak's blade flicked out and the vase shattered, the shards flying across the floor. Rand felt the temptation. The one power was there. Saidin. It was buzzing in the back of his mind, a raging river of molten light and filth. It called to him. "Use me," it whispered. "I can crush him. I can burn him to ash. I can wrap him in flows of air and snap his neck." If Rand seized Saidin, he could end this in a heartbeat. But he couldn't. If he channeled, he would reveal himself. The Seanchan had domain. They would feel the channeling. And worse, if he used the power, he might lose control. The taint would grab him. No, Rand thought. I am a man. I will fight as a man. He pushed the power away. He focused on the sword. Turak lunged. Rand stepped into the attack. The boar rushes down the mountain. It was a reckless move, a heavy two-handed overhead chop. Turak was forced to block. The impact jarred his arm. For the first time, the High Lord looked surprised. He had expected finesse, and Rand had given him brute force. "Good," Turak grunted. They fought on. The sound of steel on steel rang through the house. Ingtar, Mat and Perrin were edging toward the door. Turak saw them, but he did not call for guards. He was enjoying himself. He was an arrogant man, and his arrogance was his weakness. He believed he could kill Rand and then deal with the others. Rand was tiring. His breath was coming in ragged gasps. The void was slipping. Fear was creeping back in. Turak saw it. "You are finished, boy," he said. "You have spirit, but you lack the stamina." Turak came in for the kill. A thrust straight for the heart. Rand saw the blade coming. It seemed to move in slow motion. He knew he could not parry it in time. Sheathe the sword. It was a Shienaran concept. To accept a wound, to deliver a fatal blow. Rand didn't think. He didn't decide. His body just moved. He did not try to block. He twisted his body slightly. Turak's sword pierced Rand's side. It slid between his ribs, a burning line of white-hot pain. But because Rand had not blocked his own sword, was free. Rand stepped forward, impaling himself further on Turak's blade to bring the High Lord within reach. Turak's eyes widened. He realized his mistake too late. He tried to pull his sword back, but it was stuck in Rand's flesh bone. Rand swung, heron wading in the rushes. The blade took Turak in the chest. It cut through the silk, through the ribs, and into the heart. Turak gasped. A bubble of blood formed on his lips. He looked at Rand with a mixture of shock and respect. "Heron," he whispered. Then he collapsed, sliding off Rand's sword. Rand stood there, swaying. The pain in his side was blinding. He looked down. Turak's sword was still sticking out of him. "Rand," Perrin was there. His big hands were gentle. "Don't pull it out. Not yet." "We have to go," Rand gritted out. The void was gone. The pain was real. The room was spinning. "Guards!" a voice shouted from the hallway. The sound of the fight had finally drawn attention. "Run!" Ingtar commanded. Perrin supported Rand on one side. Hurin grabbed the horn chest. Mat led the way, the dagger in his hand. They burst out of the room into the corridor. Soldiers were coming from the other end. "Back!" Ingtar shouted. "To the garden!" They scrambled back through the sliding door into the night. The fog was waiting for them. "They will be on us in seconds," Ingtar said. "We need to get to the streets." They ran. Rand stumbled, his feet heavy. Every step sent a jolt of agony through his side. The blood was soaking his shirt warm and sticky. They vaulted the wall again. This time it was clumsy. Rand fell into the dirt on the other side. Perrin hauled him up. "Come on, Rand," Perrin urged. "Just a little further." They hit the streets. The city was fully awake now. The alarm gongs were ringing, brazen jarring sounds that echoed off the stone buildings. "There," Mat pointed. Down the street, a column of white-clad horsemen was charging, white cloaks, and from the other direction, a unit of Seanchan cavalry on armored horses was approaching. They were trapped in the middle. "The alley!" Hurin cried, pointing to a narrow, dark fissure between two warehouses. They dove into the alleyway just as the two armies collided in the street behind them. The sound of the clash was deafening. Screams of men and horses, the crunch of metal, the thunder of hooves. They ran down the alley. It was tight, barely wide enough for two men to walk abreast. The stone walls were high and damp. They reached the end. It was a dead end. A high wall blocked the way. "No," Mat moaned. "No, no, no." "We can climb it," Perrin said, looking up. "But with the chest and Rand." "They are coming," Hurin whispered. He was looking back down the alley. At the entrance of the alley, Seanchan soldiers were gathering. They had seen the fugitives. They were forming a shield wall. There were at least 50 of them. "We can't fight them," Mat said, his voice rising in panic. "We're trapped." Rand leaned against the wall, clutching his side. He felt weak. He felt like he was fading. "I failed," he thought. "We got the horn, but we can't get it out." Then Ingtar stepped forward. The Shienaran lord turned to face them. In the gloom of the alley, his face was unreadable. "Go over the wall," Ingtar said quietly. "Ingtar?" Rand asked. "I will hold them," Ingtar said. He drew his sword. "It is narrow here. They can only come at me two at a time. I can hold them off for a while." "You'll die," Perrin said. "Every man dies," Ingtar said. He looked at Rand. "Rand, I have to tell you something." "We don't have time," Mat urged. "They're coming." "Listen to me," Ingtar snapped. His voice cracked. The hard veneer of the soldier broke, and beneath it was a man in deep pain. "I am a dark friend," Ingtar said. The silence in the alley was heavier than the fog. Rand stared at him. "What?" "I let the grey man into Faldara," Ingtar confessed. The words rushed out of him as if he had been holding them back for a lifetime. "I hid him. I wanted to save Shienar," the Dark One promised. He promised that if I served him, he would spare my land. The Trollocs, they never stop. The shadow never sleeps. I thought I could save my people by making a deal." He looked at Rand, his eyes shining with tears. "But I was wrong. I see that now. There is no saving anything with the shadow. It only consumes." "Ingtar," Rand whispered. He didn't know what to say. He should hate him. Ingtar had betrayed them. He had let the shadow into the fortress. "I wanted the horn," Ingtar said. "I thought if I could bring the horn to the Dark Lord, he would make me a king. But then I saw you. I saw how you fought. I saw the light in you." Ingtar gripped his sword hilt until his knuckles were white. "I want to come back," Ingtar said. "I want to walk in the light again. Can I? Is it too late for me, Rand? Can a man who has walked in the shadow ever return?" Rand looked at the Seanchan soldiers advancing down the alley. They were slow, cautious. They knew they had the prey trapped. Rand looked at Ingtar. He saw the desperation in the man's face. He saw the regret. "No man can walk so long in the shadow that he cannot come again to the light," Rand said. It was something he had heard once from an old story, or perhaps it was something Luz Therin whispered in his mind. But he knew it was true. "The light is always there, Ingtar. You just have to choose it." Ingtar let out a breath, a long, shuddering sigh. He stood straighter. The burden seemed to lift from his shoulders. "Thank you," Ingtar said. "Thank you, Rand al'Thor." He turned his back to them. He faced the oncoming soldiers. "Go now," Ingtar said. "Take the horn. Win." "Ingtar, go!" Ingtar shouted. "It is every man's right to choose when to sheathe the sword. This is my time." Rand looked at Ingtar's back one last time. The Shienaran stood like a rock in the stream of the alley. "May the last embrace of the mother welcome you home," Rand whispered the traditional borderland farewell. Perrin and Mat scrambled up the wall, hauling the chest with them. They reached down and pulled Rand up. As they crested the wall, Rand looked back. The Seanchan had reached Ingtar. "Shinoa!" Ingtar roared. It was a battle cry of pure defiance. "Shinoa and the light!" He threw himself into the soldiers. He did not defend. He attacked. His sword was a blur of silver. He cut down the first two men. He took a spear in the shoulder, but he didn't stop. He hacked the spear shaft and drove his blade into the attacker. He was a whirlwind of death. He was buying them seconds, and seconds were all they needed. Rand dropped down on the other side of the wall. The sounds of the fight in the alley, the screams, the clash of steel, the roar of Ingtar faded slightly behind the stone barrier. They were in another street now, but they were not safe. The city was a war zone. The White Cloaks had broken through the outer defenses. The Seanchan were rallying. The sky was lit by the fires of the burning ships in the harbour. And the fog. The fog was swirling thicker than ever. They ran. Rand held his side, the blood leaking between his fingers. He was dizzy. "We need a place to hide," Perrin said, "and Rand can't keep going." "There is no place," Mat said. He was looking at the chest. "We have the horn. We have to use it." "Not yet," Rand gasped. "Not here." They stumbled into an open square. It was the main plaza of Falme, and it was a slaughterhouse. White Cloaks and Seanchan were engaged in a brutal melee. The White Cloaks fought with lance and sword. The Seanchan fought with spear and domain. Lightning arced across the square. It struck a group of White Cloaks, blasting them from their saddles. The smell of ozone and burnt flesh was overpowering. "The power," Rand whispered. He could feel it. The women were channeling. "We have to get through," Perrin said, "to the countryside." But the way was blocked. A line of Seanchan heavy infantry held the far side of the square, and behind them stood the High Lady Suroth, surrounded by her domain, and behind the White Cloaks on the other side rode Geofram Bornhald. They were caught between the hammer and the anvil. "We're dead," Hurin whimpered. "We're done for." Rand looked at his friends. Mat looked wild, his eyes on the horn. Perrin looked steady, his axe in his hand. They had come so far. They had lost Ingtar. They had fought Turak. Rand touched the wound in his side. It burned like fire. He knew deep down that this wound would never truly heal. It was a mark. "Mat," Rand said softly. Mat looked at him. "The horn," Rand said. Mat looked at the chest. Then he looked at the armies closing in on them. He looked at the lightning tearing the sky. "Now?" Mat asked. "Now," Rand said. "The grave is no bar to my call." Mat knelt. He flipped the latch on the chest. He threw it open. The gold of the Horn of Valere shone with an inner light. It seemed to push back the fog for a few feet around them. Mat reached in. He lifted the horn. It was large, curved, heavy. He stood up. The battle in the square seemed to pause. Even the soldiers fighting for their lives seemed to sense that something monumental was about to happen. The air grew heavy with static. Mat Cauthon the trickster, the gambler, the boy who just wanted to be left alone, raised the Horn of Valere to his lips. He took a deep breath, and he blew. This concludes Chapter 2. The grave is no bar. We have walked the razor's edge of the heist, witnessed the duel of the Blade Masters, and stood witness to the redemption of Ingtar Shinoa. The price has been paid in blood. The escape has been made. But the trap has closed. Chapter 3. The Dragon Reborn. The sound of the Horn of Valere was not like a trumpet. It was not a brassy note that cut through the air. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It rose from the cobblestones of the street. It vibrated in the stone walls of the buildings. It hummed in the bones of every man and woman in Falme. It was a deep, resonant tone that felt like the earth itself was singing. Mat Cauthon lowered the horn from his lips. He looked stunned. He held the golden curve of metal in his hands, and he stared at it as if he had never seen it before. The sound did not fade away. It hung in the air, a long, sustaining note that refused to die. Around them, the battle had stopped. The white cloaks on their horses reined in their mounts. The animals were dancing nervously, their eyes wide, their ears flattened against their heads. The Seanchan soldiers lowered their spears. Even the domain, those women who had been trained to be weapons, lowered their hands. The lightning that had been tearing the sky apart ceased. The thunder faded. All that remained was the note. Om. And the fog. The fog on Toman Head had been thick before. It had been a nuisance, a grey blanket that hid the streets and dampened the sounds of the city. But now the fog changed. It began to roil. It began to glow. It wasn't just grey anymore. There were streaks of gold in it. Streaks of silver. It swirled around the square like a living thing, wrapping around the buildings, curling around the legs of the horses. Rand al'Thor stood in the center of the square, clutching his side. The pain from the wound Turak had given him was a dull roar, a fire that ate at his ribs. But he forgot the pain. He forgot the blood soaking his shirt. He looked into the fog. "They are coming," Hurin whispered. The sniffer was on his knees, tears streaming down his face. "The legends, they are coming." At the edge of the square where the fog was thickest, a shape began to form. It was just a shadow at first, a tall silhouette on a horse. But as it moved forward, the fog seemed to cling to it, to become part of it. A horse stepped out of the mist. It was a massive beast, a stallion, with a coat like polished thunderstorms, and on its back sat a man. He was a giant of a man. He wore armor of burnished gold that seemed to shine with its own inner light, even in the gloom of the evening. His helmet was shaped like the head of a hawk, the beak coming down over his brow, the feathers carved from gold sweeping back. He carried a sword at his hip, a sword that looked like it had seen 1,000 battles and won them all. He had a face that was hard and noble, a face of authority, a face that had commanded armies that spanned the world. It was Artur Hawkwing, the High King, the man who had united the Westlands 1,000 years ago, the man whose armies had crossed the ocean to found the Seanchan Empire. And here he was, riding out of the mist to fight against them. He was not a ghost. He looked solid, real. But there was a quality to him that was more than real. He was vibrant. The colors of his armor were too bright. The blue of his eyes was too deep. He looked like a painting that had come to life. Behind him, others rode out of the mist. There was a woman with golden hair, braided in a complex, intricate style. She wore trousers and a short coat, and she carried a silver bow. She rode a white mare that stepped high and proud. Birgitte Silverbow, the hero of 100 stories. There was a man with 2 swords on his back, a man with a scarred face and a grin that was both dangerous and charming. Gaidal Kane. There was a man in green armor, a man with a hammer, a man with a lance. They came in the dozens, then the hundreds, the heroes of the Horn. They filled the street behind Mat. They were a legion of legends. The Seanchan soldiers stared. They knew who Artur Hawkwing was. They worshipped him. They claimed descent from his armies. To see him here riding against them, it broke their minds. They stepped back, their discipline shattering. Artur Hawkwing reined in his horse in front of the group. He looked down at Mat. His eyes were piercing. "The trumpeter," Hawkwing said. His voice was like thunder rolling in a valley, deep and powerful. "You have sounded the call. We have come." Mat swallowed. He looked terrified. I just blew it," he stammered. "We were trapped." "The grave is no bar to my call," Hawkwing quoted. He smiled, and it was a terrifying expression. "It has been long since we rode the winds of time." Then Hawkwing turned his gaze to Rand. The smile faded. Hawkwing's expression became serious, respectful. "Lose Therin," Hawkwing said softly. Rand shook his head. "I am Rand al'Thor," he said. "I am a shepherd from the 2 rivers." Hawkwing chuckled. "You may have a new name and a new face, but I know you. We all know you." We have fought by your side since the turning of the wheel began. You are the dragon. You are the champion of the light." Rand felt a chill go through him. He didn't want to be the dragon. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to go home. "We are here to fight," Hawkwing said, drawing his sword. The blade was named Justice, and it shone like a star. "But we cannot fight your battle for you, Luz Therin. We can clear the field. We can drive back the invaders. But the shadow is yours." Hawkwing pointed his sword toward the sky. Rand looked up. Above the city, the clouds were churning. They were dark, angry clouds, blacker than the night. And in the center of the clouds, a face was forming. It was a face of fire and darkness. Eyes that were caverns of flame, a mouth that was a pit of despair. It was Ba'alzaman, the Dark One, or the man who claimed to be him. "He is waiting for you," Hawkwing said. "I can't," Rand whispered. He touched his side. "I'm hurt. I can barely stand." "You must," Hawkwing said. "The pattern demands it. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills." Suddenly Perrin stepped forward. The blacksmith's apprentice held a long bundle in his hands. It was wrapped in cloth. He had been carrying it since they left the manor, though he hadn't opened it. "Rand," Perrin said. "The banner." Perrin pulled the cloth away. It was the dragon banner. It was huge. It was white as snow. And on it was the figure of a dragon, a serpentine creature of red and gold. It was a creature of legend, a creature that did not exist in this age. Perrin drove the staff of the banner into a crack in the cobblestones. The wind caught it. The banner unfurled, snapping in the breeze. The sight of it sent a shockwave through the square. The dragon banner, the symbol of Luz Therin Telamon, the symbol of the breaking of the world. To the White Cloaks, it was a sign of the devil. To the Seanchan, it was a sign of rebellion. To the heroes, it was a rallying cry. "The dragon!" Hawkwing roared. "The dragon rides again!" The heroes shouted. It was a sound that shook the city walls. Then they charged. It was not a battle. It was a force of nature. The heroes of the Horn slammed into the Seanchan lines. The Seanchan fought bravely. They were disciplined soldiers, but they were fighting myths. Hawkwing swung Justice and 3 men fell. Birgitta fired her silver bow, and every arrow found the eye slot of a helmet. Gaidal Kane danced through the pikes, his 2 swords weaving a web of steel. The Grom, those 3-eyed frog bears, roared and charged. But the heroes did not fear monsters. They had hunted monsters in the dream of Wolf for eons. One of the heroes, a woman with a spear, vaulted over a Grom and drove her weapon into its neck. The beast collapsed. The White Cloaks on the other side of the square saw the heroes attacking the Seanchan. For a moment they thought they were saved, but then the heroes turned on them too. "Out of the way!" Hawkwing bellowed. "Make way for the light!" The heroes did not distinguish between Seanchan and White Cloak. Anyone who stood on the field of battle was an obstacle. They swept the square clear. Rand stood in the middle of the chaos. He felt detached. The sounds of the battle were fading. The screams, the clashing of steel, the roar of the horn which still seemed to echo. It all became distant background noise. All he could see was the face in the sky. Ba'alzaman. The face was looking down at him. It was mocking. It was waiting. "Come to me, Luz Therin," the voice said. It wasn't spoken. It was pushed into Rand's mind. It tasted of ash and rot. "Come to me and die." Rand felt a pull. It was not a physical pull. It was a pull on his soul. The pattern was grabbing him and lifting him up. He began to walk. He didn't know where he was going. He just walked toward the fog. The fog swallowed him. The sounds of the battle vanished completely. He was alone. He walked for what felt like an eternity. The ground beneath his feet was no longer cobblestone. It felt like cloud. It felt like vapor. The mist cleared. Rand was standing on nothing. He was standing in the sky. Below him, through gaps in the clouds, he could see the city of Falme. It looked like a toy set. He could see the tiny figures of the armies. He could see the flash of the hero's armor. He could see the burning ships in the harbor. But he was not small. He looked at his hands. They were huge. He looked across the sky. Standing on a cloud of darkness was Baalzamon. He was giant, a titan. He stood as tall as a mountain. His robe was woven from shadows. His eyes were pools of magma. In his hand he held a staff, a long black rod that radiated heat and sickness. Rand looked down at himself. He was glowing. He was surrounded by a nimbus of pure white light. The sword in his hand, the heron-mark blade, shone like the sun. He realized then what was happening. The pattern had projected them. They were not just fighting in the sky physically. Their souls were fighting, and the world was their arena. Every soldier below, every citizen in Falme, every sailor on the sea could see them. They were giants battling in the heavens. "You persist," Baalzamon said. His voice was a hurricane wind. "You crawl like a beetle loose therein. I offer you power. I offer you an end to the pain, and you choose this?" Baalzamon gestured at the chaos below. "You choose to fight for these insects. They will betray you. They will cage you. The Aes Sedai will gentle you and leave you to rot. Why fight for them?" Rand gripped his sword. The pain in his side was terrible, but the anger was stronger. "I deny you," Rand said. His voice was small compared to Baalzamon's, but it carried. It rang like a bell. "I deny you, father of lies." Baalzamon laughed. The sound cracked the sky. Thunder rolled. "Then die," Baalzamon said. He struck. The black staff came down. It was a blow that could have shattered a mountain range. Rand brought his sword up. He blocked. Boom. The impact created a shockwave that cleared the clouds for miles. Below on the ground, men were knocked from their feet by the pressure. The staff pressed against the sword. Darkness against light. Rand felt the weight of the world on his arms. He gritted his teeth. He pushed back. He swung his sword, a slash of pure light. Baalzamon parried. The staff absorbed the light sizzling. They fought. It was a duel of titans. They moved across the sky, their footsteps shaking the air. Every time their weapons met, lightning arced to the ground. Rand used the forms. The wind blows over the wall. The courtier taps his fan. Even as a giant, even fighting a godlike entity, he relied on the sword forms Tam had taught him. He was a man. He would fight as a man. But Baalzamon was strong. Impossibly strong. He drove Rand back. Rand stumbled on the clouds. "You are weak," Baalzamon taunted. "You are half a man. You do not even know who you are. Do you remember Ilyena? Do you remember the children you killed? Do you remember the breaking?" "No," Rand shouted. "I am Rand al'Thor." "You are Luz Therin Kinslayer," Baalzamon roared. He thrust the staff forward. Rand dodged, but not fast enough. The tip of the staff grazed his shoulder. It didn't cut. It burned. It burned with a cold fire that froze the flesh and boiled the blood at the same time. Rand cried out. He fell to one knee. The pain in his side from Turak's wound flared up, joining the pain in his shoulder. He was burning up. Baalzamon loomed over him. "Submit," the dark figure said. "Kneel to the great Lord of the Dark, and I will spare you. I will let you rule the world." Rand looked down. He saw the battlefield below. He saw the heroes fighting. He saw Perrin holding the banner. He saw Mat blowing the horn. He saw Egwene and Nynaeve running on the hillside. They were fighting. They hadn't given up. Rand stood up. "I will never serve you," Rand said. He attacked. He threw everything he had into the blow. He didn't care about defense. He didn't care about safety. He struck at Baalzamon's chest. Baalzamon blocked with the staff, but this time Rand didn't stop. He pushed. He poured his will into the sword. The sword began to glow brighter. It became blindingly white. The black staff began to smoke. "What is this?" Baalzamon hissed. "The light!" Rand screamed. The sword cut into the staff. It sheared through the wood of the shadow. Ba'alzamon recoiled, his eyes widening in surprise. Rand pressed the advantage. He swung again. Ba'alzamon lashed out with his hand. He caught the blade of Rand's sword. His hand was huge, a claw of darkness. He grabbed the steel. The sword sizzled. The heat was intense. Ba'alzamon was trying to melt the blade. Rand felt the heat travel down the sword. It reached the hilt. The leather of the grip vaporized. The gold of the heron mark on the hilt heated to white-hot intensity. It burned into Rand's palm. Rand screamed. The pain was absolute. The heron was being branded into his flesh, searing the skin, branding the bone. But he didn't let go. He held on. He accepted the pain. Feed it to the flame, he thought. Feed the pain to the flame. He twisted the sword. Ba'alzamon howled. The light of the sword was burning his hand. Ba'alzamon released the blade. Rand saw his opening. Ba'alzamon was off balance. His chest was exposed. But Ba'alzamon still had the broken half of his staff. He thrust it at Rand. It was the same choice as with Turak. To strike, he had to be struck. Sheathed the sword, Rand stepped forward. The black staff took him in the side. In the same side as the old wound. It drove deep. It felt like a shard of ice being driven into his soul. Rand gasped. The world went grey. But he was close enough. He drove his heron-mark blade into Ba'alzamon's heart. The sword sank deep into the shadow-woven robe. Ba'alzamon froze. His eyes of fire flickered. He looked down at the sword in his chest. He looked at Rand. "You," Ba'alzamon whispered, "you have done nothing. The wheel turns." Then he exploded. It wasn't an explosion of fire. It was an explosion of shadow. He disintegrated. He turned into a cloud of black smoke that was ripped apart by the wind. The sky cleared. The giant figure of Rand al'Thor faded. Rand fell. He fell from the sky. The clouds rushed past him. The ground rushed up to meet him. He was small again. He was just a boy, a shepherd. He hit the earth. It wasn't a hard impact. The fog seemed to catch him, to slow him down. He landed softly on the grass of a hillside outside the city. He lay there staring up at the sky. The clouds were gone. The stars were coming out. He couldn't feel his body. He couldn't feel his legs. He could only feel the pain in his side and the burning in his hand. He looked at his hand. The skin was burned away in the shape of a heron. A dragon on one hand from the banner, maybe. No, the heron was on his palm. The mark of the blade. Twice marks the heron to name him true. He closed his hand. The battle was over. Down in the city, the Seanchan were fleeing. They ran for their ships. They ran into the sea. The heroes of the Horn pursued them, driving them into the water. The White Cloaks were retreating, riding hard away from the city, away from the madness they had witnessed. The heroes began to gather. They rode up the hillside to where Rand lay. Arthur Hawkwing looked down at him. The golden light of the heroes was fading. They were becoming transparent, ghostly. "The battle is done," Hawkwing said. His voice was quieter, now gentle. "The Horn calls us back." "Did we win?" Rand whispered. "You won this day," Hawkwing said, "but the great battle is yet to come. Rest now, Luz Therin. We will meet again." The heroes faded. One by one they dissolved into the mist until only the wind remained. Rand was alone. The silence was heavy. Then he heard footsteps. Rand. It was Min. Min Farshaw. She came running up the hill. She had been hiding near the city, waiting, watching. She had seen him fall. She dropped to her knees beside him. Her face was pale. "Rand," she sobbed. "Oh, Light, look at you." She touched his side. Her hands came away red. The blood was dark, mixed with something that looked like black ash. "I'm all right," Rand mumbled. His eyes were heavy. He wanted to sleep. "I'm tired." "Don't you dare close your eyes," Min said. She was tearing strips from her shirt, trying to bind the wound. "Don't you dare leave me, Rand al'Thor." Rand looked at her. He saw the halo of visions around her head, but they were blurry now. "Min," he said. I saw the banner." "I know," Min said. "Everyone saw it, Rand. Everyone saw you." "I am the dragon?" Rand asked. It was a question he was terrified to answer. Min paused. She looked at his hand. She looked at the branded heron. She looked at the wound in his side that would never truly heal. She kissed his forehead. "Yes," she whispered. "You are the Dragon Reborn." Rand let out a sigh. He closed his eyes. The darkness took him, but it was not the darkness of the shadow. It was the darkness of sleep, a deep, restorative sleep. The dragon slumbered. Far away in the mountains, Moiraine Damodred stood on a balcony looking toward the west. She could not see Falme, but she could feel the ripples in the pattern. She held a piece of paper in her hand. A prophecy. "He shall bind the 9 moons to serve him. The north shall he tie to the east." She looked at the stars. "The dragon is reborn," she said to the night. "God help us all." And that is the story of the Battle of Falme. The fog on Toman Head slowly dissipated, drifting out to sea. The dead were buried. The ships sailed away. The world moved on. But it had changed. The rumor spread from village to village, from city to city. The dragon, the dragon, the dragon. Some feared it, some rejoiced. But everyone knew that the waiting was over. The wheel of time had turned, and the last age had begun. The story of Rand al'Thor is far from over. There are deserts to cross, cities to conquer, and madness to fight. But tonight he sleeps. And you should too. Let the sound of the ocean at Falme fill your ears. Let the image of the golden heroes fading into the mist calm your mind. The pattern is woven. The thread is placed. Good night.